Welcome back, everyone, to the 5th edition of the Bourbon Judge. Today we're reviewing lovely Rock Hill Farms. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at this bottle. Beautiful design of a beautiful horse on the front. Turn around, some more of the design. And then on the back, you have some good info about the company. So Rock Hill Farms, let's get into this one a little bit. So this bourbon itself is a single barrel bourbon. It's made by the Sazerac company, which also owns Buffalo Trace. So the unique thing about Rock Hill Farms is that if you look at Buffalo Trace on their website, you will not actually find the name Rock Hill Farms. However, on the back here, you will see Buffalo Trace name. So essentially, Sazerac company, who owns Buffalo Trace, they created this bourbon. It's a single barrel bourbon. And the bourbon is kind of unique in a lot of ways. The bourbon itself is actually made from, I think it's mash bill number 2. So along the same lines as Blanton's and also Elmer T. Lee. So a very unique bourbon. Again, it's not listed on Buffalo Trace website, but it's a very separate brand under the Sazerac brand as a whole. So separate brand all by itself. Again, it's a single barrel, so it's not blended. It's truly made as one single barrel, which is very nice. This bourbon itself, it's about 100 proof. So if you see here on the front, this one is 100 proof. And some other good things about the bourbon itself is 100 proof. There is no age, so you're not going to find any age on it as a whole, but just kind of taking a look at the lovely deep brown, almost like a golden brown, if you will. My guess, just from knowing the bourbon and trying it for many years, I would guess it's probably maybe aged anywhere from 5 to 6 years. But again, there's truly no proof of that. Just my own thoughts as the bourbon judge. So I think we probably should kind of go in, get into it a little bit, just kind of talk about maybe, if you will, the price point. So this bourbon, you can find it anywhere. Let's say anywhere from like $60 to $75. It honestly depends on where you live. But typically when I find it, it's anywhere from $60 to $75. And then when you think about from an availability standpoint, this bourbon is a bit challenging to find. So I'm not going to lie. If you find this bourbon, make sure you buy a bottle, buy 2 bottles. I personally have this one and a backup as well because it's a really good bourbon. So if you end up enjoying it, make sure you buy a couple bottles. I'll also say that if you do end up trying to find it and locate it and so forth, you may have some trouble. So make sure that you reach out to your local liquor store owner who you hopefully became friends with, and make sure that you ask them to try to find a bottle for you because, again, it's pretty challenging to find. So let's kind of go ahead and get into the smell real quick here. Ooh, this is nice. It's nice and smooth. Smell caramel, vanilla, some butterscotch. Very neat, very clean. You don't smell that deep alcohol smell, right? It's very just clean, which is nice. So I think we probably should get into the best part of it, right? Which is the tasting. Wow. So when I taste this, there's not a ton of fruit, right? A lot of times when I taste bourbon, you taste some of the notes like the cherry and so forth. This one's just very smooth off the palate. Taste some caramel, some vanilla, a bit of oak. You taste definitely the oak barrels, but overall very smooth. This is a really good bourbon as a whole, right? You're thinking about the quality of the bourbon. You're thinking about the fact that it's a single barrel, and you're thinking about the fact that, this one from an aging process, because we don't know the age, you can kind of tell from the darkness, the deepness of the bourbon itself, the color, it's been aged a good number of years. So from a quality standpoint, at least several years. Overall, let's just go ahead and kind of finish this real quick. Wow. Folks, as I said last week, when you think about high quality bourbon, there's a few that come to mind. Everyone talks about Pappy this, Stag that. If you want an everyday bourbon that is a phenomenal bourbon at a slightly higher price point, Rock Hill Farms is the bourbon for you. It's the bourbon I would recommend for someone who's new to trying bourbon and is really starting to really enjoy it, starting to really kind of become maybe having a true affiliation with bourbon. And for a true bourbon drinker, someone who really just enjoys a great bourbon, this is something that I highly recommend for anyone. For me, the judgment is pretty simple. You can say to yourself, bourbon judge, should I buy it? Should I leave it on the shelf? What should I do with it? For me, it's really simple. The judgment is in. Hands down, this is a phenomenal bourbon. It's not a good bourbon. It's a phenomenal bourbon. I rank Rock Hill Farms as probably my top 3 of all bourbons I've ever tried. And that includes the Stags and the Pappies and all that good stuff. This is a phenomenal bourbon. So hands down, if you find this, please make sure you buy it. Next week, we're going to change up a little bit next week. We're going to review a rye bourbon, right? We haven't really did that yet. So we're going to review a rye bourbon. And it's actually going to be brought to you by courtesy of one of my favorite Asian restaurants locally, Nazi. Thank you, Nazi, for your contribution to the Bourbon Judge. We're going to review a bourbon, and we'll tell you next week which rye bourbon that is. And until then, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you for enjoying the Bourbon Judge, and we'll talk to you next week, folks. See ya.